The alarm hits at 2:14 in the afternoon. Not the fire alarm, not a drill. The other one, the low cycling pulse that means something inside the building has gone wrong in a way that cannot be explained in 30 seconds or less. Red emergency lights kick on along every corridor of the JAG building at Naval Base San Diego, and for a moment the entire place holds its breath. In that red half-darkness, a woman walks. She is moving fast but not running. There is a difference, and she knows it. Running announces panic. Fast, deliberate movement announces purpose. She is wearing a gray blazer that has seen better days, hair pulled back tight against her neck. No rank on her collar, no badge on her chest, just a woman. Just movement, just purpose. Behind her, half a step back, Master Chief Roy Carver keeps pace. His jaw is set in the way that jaws set when a man has made a decision and is not interested in second-guessing it. Beside him, NCIS. Special Agent Marlene Cole has her hand near her sidearm, but has not drawn it yet. Ahead of them at the end of the corridor is a door marked Server Room 2. The woman in the gray blazer does not slow down. She reaches the door, places her hand flat against it for exactly 1 second, the way someone does when they are listening through the surface, and then she nods. The narrator's voice settles in the way a good one does not, over the moment but underneath it. In 30 years covering military affairs, I have never seen anything quite like what happened at Naval Base San Diego on a Tuesday morning in October. A woman that an entire courtroom had spent 4 hours mocking was about to tear the whole thing apart. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back. Back to 9:30 that same morning. Back to the lowest seat in the room. Here is something worth remembering about this base. Naval Base San Diego. If you were paying attention to the news in 1987, this place carries weight beyond its coordinates. That was the year congressional investigators were asking hard questions about weapons that had disappeared on paper rifles, ordnance equipment that existed in one ledger and vanished from another, while officers in pressed uniforms sat before television cameras and explained calmly and repeatedly that they had absolutely no idea how it had happened. A lot of people believed them. Some people did not. If you were old enough to watch those hearings, you remember the feeling, the particular grinding frustration of watching someone look directly into a camera and tell you something that you knew in your bones was not the complete truth. You remember thinking someone knows. Someone always knows. The question is whether anyone with the authority to act on that knowledge ever will. That question did not go away in 1987. It never goes away. At 9:28 on a Tuesday morning in October, the courtroom on the second floor of the JAG building is already full. 3 Navy captains sit at the elevated panel table, the kind of arrangement that exists to remind everyone in the room exactly where authority lives. A commander sits to their left, handling procedural details. The court reporter has her fingers poised. 2 security personnel stand near the side door. One young enough that the uniform still looks slightly borrowed. The other older, carrying the particular stillness of someone who has stood in a lot of rooms waiting for things to happen. At the prosecutor's table, Lieutenant Commander Garrett Finch arranges his notes with the careful attention of a man who has prepared for this extensively and knows it. He is 34 years old, JAG-trained, ambitious in the way that men are ambitious when they have not yet encountered the specific humbling experience of being completely wrong about something that mattered. His record is clean. His courtroom manner is polished. He has tried 11 cases and won 9 of them, and he believes without much doubt that today will be number 10. The defendant's table is where your eye goes eventually. The woman sitting there does not look like what the case file says she should look like. The file describes a fraud, a theft, an act of calculated betrayal against the United States military. The woman at the table looks like someone who has been waiting in line at a government office for slightly longer than expected. Gray blazer, hair back, hands folded on the table in front of her, perfectly still. No expression that you could easily name. Her name, according to the docket, is Diana Reeves. She is 42 years old. For the past 6 years, she has worked as an administrative secretary in the Pacific Fleet Logistics Office, processing transfer paperwork, managing filing systems, doing the invisible work that keeps a large bureaucratic organization from collapsing under the weight of its own documentation. She makes coffee. She answers phones. She is by all institutional measures exactly the kind of person that large organizations depend on entirely and notice almost never. Today, she is accused of forging transfer documents, of using her access to the logistics system to authorize the movement of 40 M4 rifles, 22 M9 pistols, 12 tactical radios, and 4 advanced targeting systems to an unauthorized location. Of receiving payment, 3 deposits totaling $25,000 from offshore accounts and linked to shell companies in exchange for her role in making millions of dollars worth of military property vanish from the official record. The charge sheet uses words like fraud, betrayal, espionage. Diana Reeves sits with her hands folded and her expression neutral and waits. Admiral Harlan Voss enters the room at 9:31. He is 61 years old and he carries those years the way certain men do not, as weight but as credential. 2 stars on his collar, shoulders that have not softened, a face that has been weathered by 3 decades of sun and salt air, and the specific discipline of a man who decided at a very young age exactly who he intended to be and has not permitted himself to deviate from that decision since. Before we go any further, Harlan Voss deserves more than a villain's introduction. In 1991, he was 28 years old and serving in Desert Storm. There is a citation in his service record that describes in the careful, understated language of military commendations what happened outside Kuwait City on a February morning when his unit came under unexpected fire. It says that then Lieutenant Voss, under direct enemy fire, moved repeatedly between cover and open ground to extract 3 wounded soldiers. It says that he did this without being ordered to and without waiting to assess his own safety. The Silver Star citation does not mention that he was hit twice doing it. He came home from that war believing something about service, about what the uniform meant, about the covenant between the men and women who wore it and the country they protected. He spent 30 years building a career on that belief, mentoring junior officers, writing letters of condolence to families sitting at bedsides in military hospitals, and holding the hands of men who were afraid to die. He believed in all of it. And then somewhere along the way, in a process that is rarely dramatic and almost always quiet, he stopped believing in the system that was supposed to protect that belief. He watched decisions get made for reasons that had nothing to do with the mission. He watched contracts go to companies that paid the right people and watched equipment go to the wrong places and watched the official record smooth itself out like a sheet being pulled tight over something ugly underneath. And somewhere in that slow, corrosive disillusionment, Admiral Harlan Voss made a choice. The choice did not announce itself. It never does. That is what makes him something more complicated than a cartoon. That is what makes him, in certain uncomfortable ways, understandable. Not excusable, not forgivable, but understandable, and that distinction matters because it is the difference between a story about evil and a story about how ordinary people, people who once genuinely believed in what they were doing, lose their way inside systems that disappoint them. He crosses the courtroom floor and takes his seat in the front row with the confidence of a man who has never once had to wonder whether he belongs in the room he is entering. He looks at Diana Reeves. She looks back at him. Voss has been invited to speak, to contextualize the severity of what this woman allegedly did, to remind the panel and the room that the theft of military hardware is not a bureaucratic infraction. It is a wound to operational security. It is a potential threat to the men and women whose lives depend on that equipment being where the manifest says it is. He stands. He looks at Diana Reeves one more time, and then he says it. Miss Reeves, if you were an officer, your rank would be Lieutenant Paperclip. The courtroom laughs. It is not a polite laugh. It is the kind of laugh that a room produces when the person with the most authority in it has just given everyone else permission to stop taking something seriously. Finch laughs the loudest, a short, sharp sound that he does not bother to suppress. The court reporter's mouth twitches. Even the 2 security personnel exchange a look. 23 people in that room, and the consensus forms in approximately 4 seconds. This woman is not a threat. She is an embarrassment. She is a cautionary tale about what happens when someone who processes paperwork gets greedy and not very smart about it. Diana Reeves does not look away from Voss. She does not flinch, does not flush, does not do any of the things that a person being publicly humiliated usually does involuntarily, because humiliation has a physiological component that is difficult to override. Her response comes slow, clear. The temperature of water at the bottom of a very deep well. Higher than yours, sir. You just don't know it yet. The laughter doubles. In the advisory row, 3 seats from the aisle, Master Chief Roy Carver does not laugh. He is 56 years old, which means he enlisted at 20 and has been paying attention for 36 years. He has a face that has been rearranged slightly by life, a jaw that healed crooked after Somalia in 1993, a scar along his left temple from a different situation that he is not required and does not choose to discuss. He has learned over 3.5 decades to pay attention to the things that do not add up. Right now, several things do not add up. He watches Diana Reeves's hands. She has placed them flat on her thighs, fingers aligned the way you place your hands when you have been trained to keep them visible and non-threatening. Her right index finger has a callus, the specific elongated callus that develops after thousands of hours marking tactical maps with grease pencils. He has seen that callus on logistics specialists, on operations planners, on people who have spent significant portions of their lives in rooms with large maps on the walls, making decisions about where things go and how they get there. He has never seen it on a secretary. He watches her breathe. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. The rhythm is precise, and it is not accidental. That breathing pattern is taught in specific contexts. Combat medics learn it for working under fire. EOD technicians learn it for the 30 seconds before they make a cut. Special operations personnel learn it for the moment before a green light, when the adrenaline is looking for somewhere to go, and the only place it can go is controlled exhalation. That is not how a secretary breathes when she is facing espionage charges. Carver opens his notebook. He writes one line. Check her full service record. All of it. If you've ever been in a situation where staying calm wasn't optional, where the stakes were real and the fear was real, and the only thing standing between function and collapse was the discipline to keep your breathing on account, you know exactly what that looks like from the outside. And you know it is not something a person performs. It is something a person has built over years out of necessity. Lieutenant Commander Finch takes the floor. He is good at this. The posture is right. The voice is calibrated. The eye contact moves across the panel with the practiced rhythm of someone who understands that a courtroom is at its core a performance and that performances succeed or fail on the quality of their preparation. He walks the panel through the evidence, the way a man walks someone through a house he is trying to sell. Here is this feature, here is this feature, here is this feature, and by the time you are finished, you understand why the price is what it is. Username D. Reeves. Confirmed IP address, Workstation 7 Pacific Fleet Logistics Office, Building C. Confirmed. Digital signature, 16 separate transfer authorization forms, all bearing Diana Reeves's credentials. Confirmed. Timestamps match precisely to the 4 windows during which the hardware shipment was reclassified, rerouted, and disappeared from the official inventory. He pulls up the financial records. 3 deposits, offshore accounts, shell companies with addresses in places that are designed to make the money harder to follow. $5,000, $8,000, $12,000. Each deposit appearing within 7 days of a transfer event. He spreads his hands and lets the silence work. Your honors, the evidence is not complex. This is a civil servant who believed she had found an easy way to supplement her income. She was wrong about the easy part. Then Finch turns to Diana Reeves directly. Miss Reeves, this is your username. Yes. This is your workstation IP address. Yes. This is your digital signature on 16 separate transfer authorizations. Yes. Then you admit you authorized the transfer of 40 M4 rifles, 22 M9 pistols, 12 tactical radios, and 4 advanced targeting systems to an unauthorized location. Diana Reeves looks at him steadily. I admit my credentials were used. Finch smiles, not the warm kind. Your credentials, as if someone borrowed them without asking. She does not answer. In the advisory row, Carver writes a second note. She's not playing defense. She's waiting. The men laughing in this courtroom, most of them were in middle school when the Iran-Contra hearings were on television. They never had to decide what to do when the institution you spent your life defending turned out to be doing exactly what it accused its enemies of doing. They never sat in front of a television set and watched a man in uniform look into a camera and say things that were technically true and operationally dishonest and feel the specific grinding frustration of knowing the difference. Diana Reeves has sat in that kind of room. She knows exactly what it feels like. The panel has 3 captains on it and 1 commander. None of them have worked logistics. All of them have the look of men who arrived this morning expecting to confirm something that had already been decided and are now in the process of performing that confirmation with the appropriate institutional gravity. One of them leans forward. Miss Reeves, you've heard the evidence presented. The digital record appears straightforward. Do you have anything to add before we move to deliberation? Diana Reeves looks at him with the particular calm of someone who has been waiting for exactly this question. I request access to the chain of custody logs, both layers, unclassified and classified. Finch is on his feet before she finishes the sentence. Your honors, the defendant does not have clearance for classified documentation. Naval Supply Logistics Instruction 4.7.2. Diana's voice does not rise. It does not need to. Any defendant in a fraud investigation involving government property retains the right to review chain of custody documentation relevant to their case, including dual-layer logs. The regulation applies regardless of the defendant's standard clearance level when the documentation is directly material to the charges. The room goes quiet in a different way than it went quiet for Voss's joke. That silence was communal, comfortable, the silence of a group that had just been given permission to relax. This silence is individual. It is the silence of people suddenly doing private calculations. Finch's mouth opens, closes. He looks at the panel. In the front row, Harlan Voss straightens in his chair. It is a small movement. If you were not watching for it, you would miss it. Carver is watching for it. He writes a third note. She cited the regulation by exact number, not by description, not by general reference, by number. Nobody does that unless they have spent significant time inside that instruction manual. Nobody does that unless they needed to know. The presiding captain clears his throat. We will take that under advisement. The hearing will recess until 1300 hours. The gavel comes down. The holding room is concrete and fluorescent, the way holding rooms always are, as if the people who design them believe that the absence of aesthetic consideration is itself a form of message. One metal table, two chairs, a camera in the corner with a blinking red light. Diana Reeves sits with her hands flat on the table surface. Finch brings Petty Officer Tyler Rourke in for identity verification, a routine step procedurally required. Tyler is 26 thin in the way of someone who forgets to eat when he is working on something carrying a laptop and a fingerprint scanner, with the slightly self-conscious manner of a young man who is aware that he is the least important person in most rooms he enters. Finch runs through the paperwork. Name, date of birth, social security confirmation. Then fingerprints. Tyler sets the scanner on the table. Right hand first. The glass lights green. Match confirmed. Left hand. Another match. Tyler glances at his laptop screen, and then he stops. For exactly 2 seconds, the personnel database returns something it is not supposed to return at this access level. Something that lives behind a clearance wall that Tyler's credentials should not be able to touch. The system is already in the process of recognizing its error and correcting it. The file is encrypting itself, pulling back, slamming the door. But for 2 seconds, the words are on the screen. Commander, Naval Special Warfare. Clearance level TS/SCI. Assignment classified. Status active. Unauthorized access contact. NCIS immediately. Then white. Then the access denied screen. Then nothing. Tyler looks at the laptop. He looks at Diana Reeves. She is looking back at him. Her expression has not changed. Her hands are still flat on the table. She gives him nothing, no nod, no acknowledgement, no signal of any kind. Just the same steady neutral attention she has given to everyone in this building since 9:30 this morning. Problem, Finch says, not looking up from his own paperwork. Tyler swallows. No, sir. Just loading slow. Finch nods and loses interest. Tyler closes the laptop. His hands are not completely steady. He follows Finch out of the room, and when the door closes and the lock engages, he stands in the corridor for a moment and does not move. Commander, Naval Special Warfare. Active. He pulls out his phone. Starts to type a message to his supervisor. Stops. Deletes it. Thinks about what it means if the wrong person sees that message. Puts his phone away. He walks toward the IT control room and says nothing to anyone. In the break room on the first floor, Finch is eating a sandwich and laughing. The group of JAG officers around him has the easy, settled energy of people who believe they are past the difficult part of something. A group chat on someone's phone is being passed around 23 members, all JAG officers and legal clerks, the messages scrolling with the particular cruelty that groups permit themselves when they are certain there are no consequences. Finch reads one of the messages, shares it, and does not feel bad about sharing it, because as far as he is concerned, the woman at the defendant's table is a traitor, and traitors do not warrant the courtesy you extend to people who have not betrayed anything. He is not a cruel man. He is a man who has decided he is certain, and certainty of that kind creates its own moral shortcuts. 3 tables away, Roy Carver finishes his coffee. He watches them. His jaw is tight in the specific way of a man who has something to say and has decided for reasons of strategy not to say it yet. He stands up, carries his tray to the disposal area, and walks out. In the hallway outside the break room, he finds Marlene Cole. She is 38 and NCIS, wearing a navy blazer and the expression of someone who has just received information that has rearranged their understanding of the situation. She came to this hearing as a formality, peripherally involved in the initial fraud investigation, present as a procedural courtesy that nobody expected to matter. It is starting to matter. Carver hands her his notebook. She reads the observations, the callus, the breathing pattern, the regulation citation. Her file came back restricted, Cole says. JSOC level. I called headquarters 20 minutes ago. They told me to contact JAC liaison. Carver is quiet for a moment. JSOC does not restrict admin personnel files. JSOC does not get involved in logistics fraud cases. JSOC gets involved in situations of a fundamentally different category. Then she's not what they think she is. Cole looks down the hallway in the direction of the holding room. Why is she letting them do this to her? Carver shakes his head. The same slow assembly that has saved his life in 3 separate conflict zones is happening in the back of his mind. Now the accumulation of details that individually mean nothing and collectively mean everything. She's waiting for something, he says. Cole's expression shifts in a way that is difficult to name, something between recognition and grief, the specific combination of the two that appears on the faces of people who carry a loss that has not finished being relevant. My brother was on that convoy in Syria, she says, 8 months ago. Lieutenant Daniel Cole, SEAL Team 7. He was 29 years old. She says it flatly, the way you say things that are too large to say with emotion and still be functional. She has said it before in the same flat register to investigators and debriefers and the people who fill out paperwork about such things. Carver looks at her. He does not say he is sorry. She has heard that, and it no longer lands anywhere useful. He says, then you have a reason to make sure this is done right. Cole looks back toward the holding room. Let's go find out who she actually is. There is one detail from that morning that the official record captures but does not dwell on. At 9:53, while the recess was in progress, a personnel database in the IT control room returned a restricted file for approximately 2 seconds before sealing itself. The access log noted the event and flagged it for review. Standard protocol. That flag went to one supervisor. Chief Dennis Pratt. He read it. He noted the access level that had triggered the flag. He looked at the name associated with the fingerprint scan, and then he picked up his phone and sent a text message to a number that did not appear in any official directory. The message was 3 words. We have a problem. Somewhere in this building at this moment, the real story has not yet begun. Diana Reeves sits in the holding room with her hands on the table and her eyes closed, breathing the way she breathes, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, and she is not afraid. She has been in this building for 4 hours. She has been in this situation in the larger sense for 6 years. And she has been waiting with the particular disciplined patience of someone who knows that the most important things happen, not when you push, but when you stop pushing and let the other side reveal themselves for exactly this moment. The trap is set. The question is whether the rat has figured out yet that the trap is not empty. Remember that question. We will come back to it. The holding room has no windows. This is by design. And holding rooms at military installations are built to create a specific psychological environment, not torture, nothing so dramatic as that, but a careful absence of orientation. No natural light means no reliable sense of time passing. No outside noise means no sense of the world continuing without you. The fluorescent bulbs overhead produce a light that is technically adequate and emotionally exhausting in equal measure. Diana Reeves has been sitting in this room for 40 minutes. Her hands are on the table. Her eyes are closed. The camera in the corner blinks its red light at irregular intervals, and she is aware of it the way you are aware of something you have already factored into your calculations. The door opens. Marlene Cole enters, closes it behind her, and does not immediately speak. She sets her NCIS badge on the table face up, a small signal of something, and looks at Diana for a long moment before sitting down. Cole has been doing this job for 12 years. She has interviewed people who were guilty of terrible things and people who were innocent of everything they were accused of, and she has learned over those 12 years that the difference between those two categories is not always visible at first glance. What she has also learned is that there is a third category, people who are technically guilty of the specific thing they are charged with, but guilty of it for reasons the charge sheet will never capture, and that this third category is in many ways the most complicated. She looks at the woman across the table and makes a preliminary assessment. Third category. Your file came back JSOC restricted, she says. Diana Reeves opens her eyes. If it's restricted, you already know I can't answer that. Your file came back JSOC restricted, Cole says again slightly differently. And the man at headquarters told me to contact JAC liaison. I've been doing this job for 12 years. JAC doesn't involve itself in admin fraud cases, which means either the system has made a very large mistake or something else is happening here. Diana looks at her steadily. Agent Cole, yes. What would you do if I told you that everything in this room is exactly where it needs to be? Cole is quiet for a moment. I would ask you how long you have been planning that. Diana glances at the camera in the corner, the way you glance at something you already know is there. Sometimes the best way to catch a rat is to let it think the trap is empty. The silence that follows is not empty. It is the silence of a woman processing something that reorganizes several things she thought she understood about the morning she has just had. Cole says it quietly, "You're the bait." Diana does not answer. She looks at the camera for another half second, then back at Cole. The expression on her face does not shift, but something behind it, some fraction of the discipline she has been maintaining, relaxes infinitesimally, the way a held breath releases when you are finally in the company of someone you can afford to let see it. Cole puts both hands flat on the table. My brother's name was Daniel, she says. Lieutenant Daniel Cole, SEAL Team 7. He was 29 years old. He was on that convoy in Syria 8 months ago. She says it the same way she said it to Carver, flat functional, the tone of someone who has learned to carry a thing by keeping it at a specific weight. Diana looks at her. The neutrality does not leave her face, but something behind it shifts, not the practiced stillness of someone performing calm, but the genuine gravity of someone who has been carrying a specific weight and has just heard the name that weight belongs to. I know who he was, Diana says. Those 4 words land differently than anything else she has said in this building all morning. Cole does not look away. She does not ask the follow-up question. She has been in enough rooms with enough people to know when a follow-up question would break something that needs to stay intact a little longer. She picks up her badge from the table stands and pauses at the door. Miss Reeves, whatever is happening here, don't let them put you away for it. Diana's eyes are already closed again. That's not the plan. The door locks behind Cole. The red light blinks. Before we move forward, let's stop for a moment. Because Harlan Voss just walked out of that courtroom, and he deserves, as we said at the start, more than a simple role in this story. In the fall of 2011, a Marine Lance Corporal named Theodore Briggs was killed in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. He was 22 years old. He had been deployed for 6 weeks. He had a mother in Baton Rouge who had already lost one son to a car accident in 2008, and a younger brother who had just started his sophomore year of high school. That November, Admiral Harlan Voss wrote a letter to Theodore Briggs' mother. It ran to 3 pages. It did not use the standard language of military condolence, the careful pre-approved phrases designed to honor without personalizing. It described specifically a conversation he had observed between Theodore Briggs and a senior NCO during a pre-deployment brief, a moment in which the young man had asked a question that Voss considered to be the mark of genuine tactical intelligence. It described the way certain people come into a unit and quietly raise the quality of everything around them, not through rank or volume, but through attention. It was a letter written by a man who genuinely understood what had been lost. That letter exists. It is in a file in Baton Rouge, in the home of a woman who has read it many times. The same hands that wrote that letter authorized a transfer protocol that redirected military hardware toward a private contractor with financial interests in 3 separate conflict zones. The same man who understood precisely and painfully what a 22-year-old's death meant to the people who loved him, made choices that would 8 months ago cost 3 other men their lives on a road in Syria, when the route information that should have been classified was no longer in practice classified at all. That is not a contradiction in the Hollywood sense, where it is meant to make the villain seem complex on the surface while remaining simple underneath. It is a contradiction in the real sense. In the sense that human beings contain contradictions that do not resolve cleanly, that the capacity for genuine grief and the capacity for catastrophic moral failure can coexist in the same person. And that understanding this is not the same as forgiving it. Harlan Voss believed in something once. The tragedy is not that he stopped believing. The tragedy is what he did with the space that left behind. In the IT control room on the first floor, Tyler Rourke is doing something he probably should have done 2 hours ago. He tells himself he is running routine system checks. He tells himself this the way people tell themselves things they do not entirely believe, because the alternative, acknowledging what he is actually doing and what it might mean, is a level of situation that he has not yet mentally prepared for. He types Diana Reeves' name into the personnel database. The basic file comes up. Administrative Secretary GS7, 6 years of service. Clean record, certain. He already knew all of this. He tries to go deeper. Access denied, NC, IS, authorization required. He tries a different approach, not the personnel file directly, but the access log. The record of who has used what systems, when from where. It is a broader query, less specifically targeted, and his clearance level technically permits it. He runs a filter. Pacific Fleet Logistics Procurement System. Last 6 months, users with authorization to approve transfers. 12 names come up. Tyler starts working through them. Access times, frequencies, patterns. Most of them cluster in normal working hours, the ordinary rhythm of people doing their jobs. A few outliers, late evenings, early mornings, but nothing that immediately signals anything beyond people who work long hours and have the clearance to do it from their desks. And then he reaches the 11th name on the list, Admiral Harlan Voss. Tyler stares at the screen for what feels like a long time, but is probably 10 seconds. 14 logins to the procurement system over the past 6 months. All of them between 2 and 5 in the morning. All of them from a terminal in the Admiral's private office. All of them on dates that Tyler, with a queasy stomach-dropping clarity, recognizes. He opens a second window, pulls up the transfer event log, the official record of when each hardware movement was authorized. He lines the dates up. 4 of Admiral Voss's late-night logins fall within 48 hours of a transfer event. Not approximately, not roughly, within 48 hours precisely each time. Tyler sits back in his chair and looks at what he has found and feels the particular unwelcome sensation of a young man who has just discovered that the world he thought he was operating in is several degrees more complicated than he had understood it to be. He copies the log to a USB drive. He stands up. He is 3 steps from the door when Chief Dennis Pratt appears in the doorway. Pratt is 44, the kind of compact, watchful man who occupies positions of mid-level institutional authority, enough clearance to know things, not enough visibility to attract scrutiny. He has been Tyler's supervisor for 14 months. He runs the IT control room with the efficient minimalism of someone who prefers that the work gets done without generating any more documentation than necessary. His eyes go to the USB drive in Tyler's hand. "Where are you headed, Rourke?" "Server room, routine backup maintenance." Pratt looks at the drive, then at Tyler's face. Tyler has been in the Navy for 3 years, which is long enough to have developed a serviceable version of a neutral expression, but not long enough to have made it entirely reflexive. "What's on the drive?" "Backup files for the trial record. Finch's orders." A pause. Not a long one. The kind of pause that could mean anything or nothing. "All right," Pratt says. "You look tired, Rourke. Long morning." "Yes, Chief." "Get the backup done and come find me after. We should debrief before the afternoon session." "Will do." Tyler walks past him and does not run, because running would be the wrong answer, and he understands this even though his body is strongly suggesting it. Behind him, Pratt stands in the doorway of the IT control room for a few seconds longer than the situation requires. Then he takes out his phone. There is something worth understanding about the way institutional cover-ups work. They are rarely dramatic at their operational level. The people who make them function are not for the most part committed ideologues or cartoonish conspirators. They are people who have made compromises one at a time, each one slightly larger than the last, until the distance between where they started and where they are now is so great that the idea of reversing direction feels more dangerous than the idea of continuing forward. In 1987, a procurement officer at a naval installation in Norfolk sat before a Senate subcommittee and explained with perfect composure that he had absolutely no knowledge of how several $1,000s worth of equipment had disappeared from official inventory. He used the word honestly 4 times in his opening statement. The subcommittee accepted his testimony. He retired 2 years later with a full pension and a plaque from his unit. A journalist who covered those hearings wrote afterward that the most disturbing thing was not the lying. It was how unremarkable the liar seemed, how completely indistinguishable from every other man in that room who was telling the truth. That is how this works. Not with fanfare, not with obvious villainy, with quiet men in unremarkable rooms making phone calls. The afternoon session begins at 1300 hours. The courtroom has a different atmosphere than the morning. Not tentatively, the panel still carries the settled confidence of men who believe they know how this ends, but something has shifted slightly in the air, the way the air shifts when a room is not quite as sealed as it appears. Finch stands. He has the bearing of a man who is ready to close. "Your Honors, the prosecution rests. The evidence is comprehensive. The documentation is unambiguous, and we request immediate recommendation for court-martial. The presiding captain turns to Diana Reeves. Miss Reeves, do you have anything to say before we move to deliberation? Diana looks at Finch. She looks at Voss in the front row. She looks at the presiding captain. I request a full system audit, she says. Access logs for all personnel with procurement authorization covering the past 6 months, including flag officers. The room goes still in a way it has not gone still before. Voss's hand resting on his knee tightens almost imperceptibly. Finch opens his mouth, but Diana is already speaking. Second Fleet Acquisition Instruction, 5210.1, paragraph 6, subsection Delta. Any defendant in a fraud case involving military property may request a third-party system audit to verify chain of custody. The instruction applies to all personnel with procurement access. The rank of the personnel in question does not limit the scope of the audit. Finch turns to his materials. His hands are moving through them with a speed that tells the room he is looking for the refutation and is not immediately finding it. The presiding captain looks at him. Lieutenant Commander, is that accurate? A pause that goes on slightly too long. The instruction does apply in contract fraud cases, Your Honor. It applies, Diana says, to any fraud case involving government property, including weapons, including logistics, including this case. Finch does not answer. 23 people in that room, and every single one of them understands what that silence means. The prosecutor, who has spent 4 hours this morning building a case with the confidence of a man who knows where all the walls are, has just walked into one he didn't know was there. The woman at the defendant's table cited a regulation he cannot refute in a fraud case he has been treating as settled, and she cited it from memory by number, with the precision of someone who has known for a long time that this moment was coming. The captain sighs. We'll take a 30-minute recess. I want JAG legal review to confirm the applicability of that instruction. If Miss Reeves is correct, we'll need to discuss how to proceed. The gavel comes down. Voss stands immediately. He walks toward the exit with the measured pace of a man who is maintaining his composure by an act of will and has enough experience with that act to make it look natural. In the hallway, his hand is already in his jacket pocket. He does not know that Cole is 30 feet behind him. He does not know that Carver is 20 feet behind Cole. What he knows is that something has shifted, that a woman he dismissed as a scapegoat, convenient, expendable, a name on documents that would draw eyes away from the names that mattered, just cited a regulatory instruction that could open doors he needs closed. The phone call he makes in the hallway outside the main corridor takes 40 seconds. The last thing he says before hanging up is, "Lock it down." Cole catches up with him at the intersection of 2 hallways near the building's central hub, in a space busy enough that whatever happens here happens in front of witnesses. Admiral Voss, a moment. He stops, turns. His expression is the expression of a man who has been interrupted on the way to something important, but is too disciplined to show irritation. Agent Cole, what can I do for you? I have a few questions about your access to the procurement system. His eyes narrow slightly the way eyes narrow when a peripheral risk becomes a proximate one. My access. I'm a flag officer. I have authorization for every system on this base. Of course, sir. Just routine follow-up. Can you confirm the last time you accessed the procurement system? I access it regularly as part of my oversight responsibilities. I don't keep a personal log of individual logins. Of course not. The system log will clarify. Cole smiles the polite professional smile of someone who is being entirely reasonable. I appreciate your time, sir. Voss looks at her for a moment longer than the conversation requires. Then he looks past her at Carver, who is standing at a distance that is technically casual and practically deliberate. He steps closer to Cole. His voice drops to the register of a man choosing his words carefully. Agent Cole, I want to suggest that you be very careful about the direction of this investigation. There are circumstances surrounding this case that are more complex than the evidence you've seen so far. There are forces at play that... Is that a threat, sir? He straightens. It's professional advice from someone who's been operating in this environment for 30 years. He walks away. Cole watches him go. Carver steps beside her. He's not running, Carver says. No, he's locking something down. That phrase, forces at play. If you were following the news closely in 1973, in the long grinding stretch between the Watergate break-in and the resignation, you heard it constantly. From men in suits and men in uniform, from press briefings and Capitol Hill anteroom conversations that somehow ended up on record. It almost always meant the same thing. Someone with a great deal to lose had just realized they were running out of time. At 1400 hours, the alarm sounds. The cycling pulse. The building sealing itself. Red emergency lights replace the fluorescence in every corridor. The PA voice is calm in the way of trained calm, the way people speak when they have rehearsed this specifically so that their voice does not do what voices want to do. Security protocol. Tango Romeo is now in effect. All exits are sealed. All personnel report to assigned stations. This is not a drill. In the IT control room, Tyler Rourke is watching his monitors with an expression that has moved past alarm into something closer to focused dread. Someone is accessing the procurement system. Not from inside the building, from outside. Not from any terminal he recognizes. Through 7 proxies bouncing the origin point across 3 continents. But the credentials the account generating the access are local. Ghost Harbor Alpha 7. Tyler knows this designation. It is a legacy program identifier from a logistics system decommissioned 3 years ago. That system was air-gapped, not connected to external networks, which means technically it cannot be accessed remotely. He is watching it be accessed remotely. The account has root-level permissions. It is inside the backup system, inside the files that predate the current logging architecture, the deep institutional memory, the records that go back further than the official inquiry, the documentation that would show not just what happened in the last 6 months, but the pattern underneath. It is copying everything. Pratt comes in behind him. What the hell is happening? Someone is in the legacy system, Tyler says. Root access. They're copying procurement records, transfer logs, classified shipping routes. That system is air-gapped. It can't be accessed remotely. The access credentials are local. Tyler looks at the account identifier. Someone in this building gave them the keys. Pratt grabs his radio. Security, this is IT control. We have an active breach. Full system lockdown now. He does not look at Tyler when he says it. He is already moving toward the door. Tyler watches him go, and a very specific thought assembles itself in the back of his mind. Quiet, careful, the kind of thought you have when you are 26 years old and not yet sure whether you have the courage of your own intelligence. He tucks the USB drive into his left sock, pulls his trouser leg down, and walks toward the stairs. Cole comes through the holding room door, moving fast. You knew this would happen, she says. Diana is already on her feet. Someone panicked when the audit request was confirmed. The lockdown, the breach, the external access is a decoy. What do you mean? The real breach is happening physically. 3 floors up. Server room 2. Someone is plugged directly into the backup system, copying files before the audit can find them. Cole stares at her. How do you know that? Because I designed the original system. I know every fail-safe, every backdoor, every point in the architecture where someone could insert a physical access without triggering the primary intrusion detection. Diana looks at Cole directly. We have approximately 4 minutes before whoever is in that room finishes the copy and wipes the transfer record. Cole makes a decision in the space of 3 seconds. She opens the holding room door. Let's go. They move into the red-lit corridor, and Carver is there already holding a radio with the look of a man who was waiting for exactly this signal. He hands Diana the radio without comment. The 3 of them take the stairwell. On the 3rd-floor corridor, moving fast through emergency light that turns everything the color of old brick, they come around the corner and find Garrett Finch standing in the middle of the hallway. He looks like a man in the early stages of a reorganization of his understanding of the world. He is holding his tablet. His face is the face of someone for whom the accumulated details of the last 90 minutes have not yet assembled into a picture he can name. He sees Diana moving toward him, and something clicks. Commander Anderson. He says it like a question, like a rumor he half heard and is not sure he believes. Move aside, Lieutenant Commander, Cole says. Active breach, we need to. But Finch is not quite hearing Cole at this moment. He is looking at Diana Reeves, the woman he spent 4 hours this morning building a case against, and something in his mind is insisting that the 2 words someone used in a corridor 3 minutes ago cannot mean what he thinks they mean. You, he says, you were sitting in that holding room. They said you were, He steps forward and his hand goes to her arm, and in the clumsy urgency of the gesture, he grabs the lapel of the gray blazer and pulls in the seam along the left shoulder, already stressed from 6 years of wear and 2 years before that of the kind of use a blazer was not designed for gives way. The fabric tears from shoulder to mid-forearm. Finch lets go. Nobody moves. The left sleeve of Diana Reeves' blazer hangs open, and the forearm it has been covering for the past 6 hours is visible in the red emergency light. There is a scar. It runs from 2 inches below the elbow to the inside of the wrist, long and jagged, and settled into the skin the way scars settle when they have been there for a long time. This is not a surgical scar. It is the kind that gets made in field conditions by someone working fast with inadequate equipment, closing a wound that shrapnel opened in Ramadi in 2007. The specific irregular edge of metal moving through tissue at velocity. The kind of scar that a 25-year-old earns when she is somewhere a logistics secretary has never been. Carver stares at it. Below the scar on the inside of her forearm is a tattoo. It is old. The black ink has gone slightly gray with time, the way tattoos do when they have been there long enough to become part of the person rather than a statement made on the person. The design is compact, a naval anchor overlaid with a trident, and beneath both symbols, a number. 7. Carver has not moved. He has seen that insignia before. Once, in 1993. In Mogadishu during 3 days that he does not discuss in any detail, and that appear in his service record in the abbreviated language used for events that were officially complicated. He saw it on the forearm of the only woman in the building. They were working out of a SEAL team logistics coordinator who had been in country for 11 weeks before the rest of them arrived, who knew every supply line, every safe house, every exfiltration point, who kept a team of 12 men supplied and operational and alive through 72 hours that should not have had survivors. He never knew her name. She was gone before the debrief. He has never seen that insignia since. His voice when it comes is barely above a breath. SEAL Team Logistics. Old school. Finch's face has gone through 3 expressions in 8 seconds and has arrived at something that looks like a man standing at the edge of a very large drop. Diana pulls the blazer closed with her free hand, clips the torn fabric with her fingers, and looks at Finch without expression. "Are we done, Lieutenant Commander?" He nods, once, fast. "Go back to the courtroom," Carver says. His voice carries something it did not carry before, not exactly deference, but something more earned than formality. "Wait there, don't speak to anyone." Finch turns and walks, quickly, almost running. Diana looks at Carver. "Master Chief?" "Yes, ma'am." 2 words. And in those 2 words, 32 years of calibrated judgment about what deserves respect and what does not. "We're out of time." They move. The server room door has 2 guards outside it. The older one, Petty Officer Miles Brandt, hard-faced institutional, in his stillness steps forward when he sees them. "Areas restricted. Lockdown protocol. Authorization required from Admiral Voss," Carver says. "That's correct, Master Chief." Carver looks at him. The look is not aggressive. It is the look of 32 years. The look of a man who has been in places where the difference between a right decision and a wrong one was not measured in career points, but in something considerably less recoverable. "Son, this room is being compromised right now. You can step aside or you can explain to a general court-martial why you helped a traitor finish the job. Those are your options." Brandt's jaw works. He steps aside. The server room is cold and dark and loud with the hum of machines. At the far end, crouching beside an open panel with a laptop connected by cable and files scrolling across the screen, in the blue-lit dark, is Chief Dennis Pratt. He hears them come in. He turns. He sees Cole's badge and Carver's face and Diana, and something about Diana. Something he cannot name immediately, but which reorganizes every calculation he has made in the last 3 hours, makes him reach for the cable. "Don't move." Cole's weapon is out. Her voice is the flat, final voice of someone who is not presenting options. Pratt's hand stops. He stands slowly, hands up. His face is the face of a man who has been running a very specific kind of dread for a long time and has just felt it arrive. Carver moves to the laptop. He disconnects the cable with the deliberateness of someone who understands what is on the machine and knows that the last thing you do with evidence is handle it carelessly. He looks at the screen. Files, transfer logs, financial records, communication intercepts, the breadcrumb trail of 2 years of institutional corruption being methodically moved to an encrypted offshore server. 73% complete, 27% still there. Diana crouches in front of Pratt, not aggressively, just down to his level, the way you get down to someone's level when you want them to hear you as a person rather than a position. "Ironclad Solutions," she says, 24 months. $12,000 a month, deposited to an account under your wife's maiden name. Pratt's face does not change, but around his eyes something crumbles. "Help tie-in, because I've been watching you for 8 months. You and everyone connected to this network." He says nothing. "Dennis." She says the name carefully, the way you say a name when you want someone to remember they are a person. 3 men died on a road in Syria because someone sold their route. One of them was 29 years old. His sister is standing 4 feet behind me. She does not look at Cole when she says it. She keeps her eyes on Pratt. He begins to cry. It is not dramatic. It is the quiet, ashamed kind, the kind that comes when someone who has been holding something terrible finally finds themselves in a room where holding it has become impossible. I have 3 children, he says. Medical bills, college. I just managed the accounts. I didn't know it would. You provided access, Diana says, not cruelly. The people who used that access made choices. So did you. Both things are true. She stands. Behind her, Cole has not moved. Her face is controlled in the way that faces are controlled when the cost of letting them go is higher than any single moment can bear. Outside, the radio crackles. All units, Admiral Voss has left the building. Emergency override main exit. Stated destination, JSOC headquarters. Cole looks at Diana. Diana is quiet for exactly 3 seconds. He's not running, she says. He's calling in favors, trying to get someone above this command to shut down the investigation before we close the loop. Carver looks at her. Can he do that? Diana picks up the radio. She looks at it for a moment the way you look at a tool you have been waiting to use. Not if the people I called get here first. She clicks the radio on. And somewhere outside this building in the October afternoon, 3 sets of headlights are already turning onto the base approach road. The lobby of the JAG building at Naval Base San Diego is not a dramatic space. It is the kind of lobby that exists purely as a transition from outside to inside, from civilian to institutional, from the world where rank does not visibly govern every interaction to the world where it governs nearly all of them. Linoleum floor, a security desk, a wall with photographs of current command leadership. At 14:37, the main entrance opens. 3 people walk through. They walk the way people walk when they have been in this building many times and do not need to orient themselves to it. Not hurrying, not performing, just moving with the settled purposefulness of people who have somewhere specific to be and have already decided everything that needs deciding before they walk through the door. Vice Admiral Harriet Wynne. 3 stars on her collar, 58 years old, a face that carries the specific weathering of a career spent largely at sea and in command, where the weather is literal and the decisions are not reversible. She commanded a carrier strike group in the Persian Gulf in 2009. She has been in rooms where the outcome of what happened in those rooms was measured in lives, and she carries that knowledge, not heavily, not dramatically, but with a quietness that is itself a form of weight. Behind her, Captain David Klein, NC, IS Pacific Fleet Director, tall measured, wearing service khakis with the look of a man who has had a long and complicated morning in ways he is not yet authorized to explain. And Colonel Edmund Farr, DOD, Inspector General, older wire-rimmed glasses, a briefcase that moves with the deliberateness of a man who understands that what he is carrying matters. He has the air of someone whose job is to arrive after things have gone wrong and assign consequences, and who is therefore deeply aware of what it means to arrive before the worst outcome has been cemented. They cross the lobby floor. The security desk officer begins to stand. Wynne does not break stride. As you were. They take the stairs. The courtroom has approximately 23 people in it when the door opens. The presiding captain is at the front, conferring in low tones with his fellow panelists. A cluster of JAG officers stands near the prosecution table. The court reporter is reviewing her notes. Everyone stops when the door opens, not because they have been instructed to, because 3 people have just entered carrying something in their posture that commands attention the way weather commands attention, not with noise, but with the quality of its arrival. Wynne walks to the center of the room. She looks at the panel. She looks at Finch, who has followed the sound of the footsteps up from the hallway and is now standing in the doorway with his tablet held against his chest. She looks around the room one more time, and then from the side door, Diana Reeves enters. She is still wearing the gray blazer. The left sleeve is still torn, held together with the pressure of her hand. Her hair is still pulled back. There is a small abrasion on her right wrist from the edge of the server room panel, and the emergency lighting has left a particular quality of alertness in her eyes that the restored fluorescent normality of the courtroom has not entirely replaced. She walks to the center of the room. She stops. And here it is. If you were here at the beginning of this story in the red-lit corridor, watching a woman in a gray blazer move toward a door that needed opening, this is the moment the narrator was describing. Not the alarm, not the server room. This. A vice admiral, 3 stars on her collar, standing in a room where 4 hours ago, every person with rank had decided this woman was nothing worth looking at closely, bringing her hand up, sharp, clean, without hesitation. Vice Admiral Harriet Wynne looks at the woman that this courtroom spent 4 hours calling a secretary, and she salutes her. Commander Reeves, welcome back, ma'am. The silence that follows is the loudest thing that has happened in this building all day. Garrett Finch's tablet hits the floor. The sound of it, plastic and glass on linoleum. The small, clean crack of something that was being held carefully and is no longer is the sound the room needs to break its paralysis. Somebody exhales. Somebody shifts their weight. The presiding captain sits down, not because he has been told to, but because his legs appear to have made a decision independent of the rest of him. Tyler Rourke, standing in the back of the room, is looking at Diana Reeves with an expression that is trying to be composed and is not entirely succeeding. Captain Klein steps forward, looks at Diana and salutes. Colonel Farr nods precisely. Diana returns the salutes with the reflexive correctness of someone for whom this is not performance, but muscle memory, the body remembering what 6 years of cover asked it to forget. "It's good to see you, ma'am," Klein says. "It's been too long." "Yes," Diana says, "it has." Wynne turns to face the room. She has the particular capacity of senior officers who have delivered information to large groups under difficult circumstances, the capacity to let her voice fill a space without raising it, to use the quality of her attention, rather than the volume of her speech to establish that what she is about to say will be heard. For those of you who were in this courtroom this morning, I want to be precise about what I'm going to tell you. Not because I enjoy delivering corrections, but because understanding what actually happened here is not optional. It is operationally necessary. She pauses. Commander Diana Reeves served 18 years in Naval Special Warfare Logistics. She designed and implemented the supply chain architecture used by DevGru and multiple SEAL team operations between 2008 and 2016. She held top-secret compartmented clearance plus special access program authority. She personally coordinated logistics for operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, and locations I am not authorized to name in this room. She is among a small number of people who understand the architecture of how special operations units are kept in the field alive and functional. Nobody speaks. In 2016, Commander Reeves was forced into early retirement following an internal investigation. That investigation was based on falsified evidence. The evidence was planted by individuals who needed her removed from a position where she had begun to identify the network we are discussing today. The charges were quietly dropped 18 months after her retirement. Her record was sealed. She was institutionally made to disappear. Wynne lets that land. 2 years ago, NCIS and JSOC approached Commander Reeves with a request. Return to this installation. Resume work in the logistics office at the grade of administrative secretary. Use her knowledge of the system, a system she built to identify the leaked document, the network, and build a case that would hold. She looks around the room slowly. She agreed. She gave up her rank, her office, her identity within this institution. She allowed herself to be treated as invisible. She allowed a case to be built against her in open court. She allowed people in this building to say things about her that I am not going to repeat, because repeating them would only extend the duration of the embarrassment of the people who said them. A brief pause, the kind that functions as a complete sentence. All of that was intentional. All of it was in service of the operation. And the operation worked. Colonel Farr opens his briefcase. He does this without theater, the simple movement of a man whose job requires him to carry things that matter and who treats the carrying of them accordingly. He removes a folder, sets it on the table, and opens it to the first page. He reads, 8 officers, 3 commanders, 2 lieutenant commanders, 3 lieutenants, all currently being detained by NCIS agents at locations across the base. All facing charges under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States, unauthorized transfer of military property violation of Article 104, aiding the enemy violation of Article 132. Court-martial proceedings to be scheduled within 90 days. 4 civilian contractors employed by Ironclad Solutions currently in federal custody. Charges including conspiracy to defraud the United States, illegal arms trafficking, and material support for unauthorized military procurement. 2 individuals connected to Kepler and Associates, the lobbying firm that represented Ironclad Solutions, and 3 other private military contractors, both currently under FBI investigation. One had already submitted his resignation from a senior position at a defense advisory committee. Farr closes the folder. Additional charges are pending as forensic review of the recovered communications continues. We expect the total number of individuals implicated to increase. He looks at the room over his wire-rimmed glasses. This investigation is not concluded. This is an accounting of what we know now. There is more to find. Finch has retrieved his tablet from the floor. He is holding it with both hands the way you hold something when you need something to hold. His face has arrived after his long morning of reorganization at a place that is not comfortable but is at least honest. He looks at Diana. The evidence, he says. His voice has lost its courtroom calibration. It is just a voice now slightly uncertain, doing its best. Your username, your signature, the deposits. You built the case you were given, Diana says. I should have questioned it more carefully. Yes, he nods. There is something in the directness of that, the absence of reassurance, the absence of the social mitigation that people usually offer when someone is clearly uncomfortable, that seems to help him more than comfort would have. She is treating him as capable of bearing the truth, which is a form of respect. The username, Diana says. The IP address, the signature. I used my own credentials. I left my own name on every document. Finch looks at her. You made yourself the obvious suspect. I made myself the only suspect, because as long as the network believed they had found the perfect scapegoat, a low-level admin with access and motive, someone no one would look too hard at, they stayed operational. They kept communicating. They kept moving money. They kept making the mistakes that build a case. She looks at him with an evenness that is not unkind. You did exactly what they needed you to do, Lieutenant Commander. You built the prosecution. You gave them confidence. And while you were focused on making the case against me, I was documenting every transaction, every login, every communication that went through this network for 18 months. Finch is quiet. Pull Admiral Voss's travel logs, Diana says. Cross-reference them with the procurement approval dates. 16 trips to Washington in the last year. Kepler and Associates every time. Finch looks down at his tablet, then up. On it, he says. Not yes, ma'am, just on it. The voice of someone who has found a direction. It is for him the beginning of something different. Voss is brought in through the main entrance at 1451. 2 NCIS agents flank him, one on each side. His wrists are cuffed in front of him, a procedural gesture rather than a precautionary one. His uniform is still pressed. His posture has not broken. He walks into the courtroom the way he has walked into rooms for 30 years, as though he belongs in it. He sees Diana. He stops. 1 beat. 2. The specific pause of a man who has spent the last hour running calculations and has just had one of them confirmed. Commander Reeves, he says it the way he might have said it 30 years ago, with something that is not quite respect, but is adjacent to it, the recognition of one professional for another across a space that has become adversarial. You played your role well. Diana looks at him. Admiral Voss, she says, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States, unauthorized transfer of military property, and violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Article 104, aiding the enemy. Article 132, fraud. Article 106, alpha espionage. His jaw tightens. You think you have everything. Diana puts her hand into the pocket of the gray blazer. She removes a phone. It is a burner, prepaid, unregistered, the kind of phone that exists specifically to have conversations that do not appear in official records. The kind of phone that an admiral running a 2-year criminal network would keep in his jacket pocket and guard with the automatic vigilance of something he never sets down, never leaves unattended, never permits to leave his person. The phone that Harlan Voss has not had in his pocket since approximately 9:29 this morning. He stares at it. The hallway, Diana says. Just before the hearing started, you bumped into me. She pauses. You thought I was a clumsy secretary getting in your way. She is almost smiling. Not quite, but almost. I have very fast hands, Admiral. It comes with the training. She hands the phone to Cole, who takes it with the careful precision of someone receiving evidence that has been a long time coming. Voss looks at the phone. He looks at Diana. He does the arithmetic that the phone's absence represents the messages on it, the contacts, the communication record of 2 years of a network that believed itself secure because it communicated through a device that no one knew existed. His face does not break, but around his eyes something settles, the particular settling of a man who has been running a very long race and has just understood with complete clarity that it is over. The 2 agents move. Voss allows himself to be turned toward the door, and then he stops, not resisting. Just stopping for one moment the way people stop when there is something they need to say, and they are running out of opportunities to say it. He turns his head toward Diana. His voice is low enough that it reaches her and Carver 4 feet away, and perhaps Cole and no one else in the room. I believed in all of it once, he says. The same things you still believe in. Diana looks at him. I know you did, sir. No judgment in it, no satisfaction, no performance of forgiveness or its absence. Just the acknowledgement of something true about a man who made choices that led him here and who was once before those choices accumulated into this a person she would have recognized as something worth the name. Voss nods. The agents walk him out. The door closes behind him. The room exhales. Roy Carver walks to Diana. He moves the way he has moved all day, with the deliberate economy of a man who does not make gestures that do not mean something. He stops in front of her and looks at her for a moment, and then he brings his hand up. The salute is not sharp in the way Wynn's was sharp. It is slower than that. It carries something different, not institutional recognition, but the personal kind. The kind that a man who has spent 32 years learning to distinguish between the people who deserve respect and the people who demand it gives when he is looking at someone who belongs unmistakably in the first category. Commander Reeves, he says, it has been an honor to watch what you did in this building today. Diana returns a salute. Master Chief, you saw what others missed. That saved this operation. Carver shakes his head slightly. I just paid attention. You built it. Paying attention, Diana says, is most of the work. Wynn approaches. Commander, we'd like to discuss reinstatement. Full rank, JSOC headquarters. You'd be coordinating the broader investigation across all branches. The network we've identified here has connections in other commands. You'd have full NCIS and IG support, unlimited access, and the authority to. I decline, Diana says. Wynn pauses. May I ask why? Diana does not hesitate. Anchor 7 is still out there. They know I'm coming now. If I move to headquarters, I lose my cover. I lose my access to this network's local infrastructure, and I lose 18 months of established presence in this building. She looks at Wynn steadily. I've spent 2 years building this case. I am not walking away from it because the first chapter is done. Wynn studies her. There is something in this exchange that goes beyond the operational argument, the particular respect of a senior officer for someone who is not asking for what most people in her position would ask for, who is not leveraging this moment for advancement or recognition, who is focused entirely on the next step of the thing, rather than the reward available for the steps already taken. Understood, Wynn says. You maintain your current assignment. Full NCIS and IG support. Whatever you need whenever you need it. Thank you, ma'am. Wynn looks at her for a moment longer. We never forgot what you did for us, Commander, even when we couldn't say so. I know, Diana says. That's why I came back. The room takes a long time to empty. It empties the way rooms empty after something significant. Slowly in small groups, people talking in voices lower than usual. The particular quiet of people who have just been given a great deal to think about and have not yet finished thinking about it. Tyler Rourke finds Diana near the side wall. He is 26 years old, and he is holding a paper bag of donuts, and he looks simultaneously sheepish and determined. Commander, he says, I brought these as an apology for this morning, for the group chat, for all of it. Diana looks at the bum, then at him. You also pulled the logs that broke this case, she says. You made a difficult call under pressure, and you made the right one. That matters more than a joke made in ignorance. Tyler's eyes are not entirely dry. He manages this with approximately the dignity available to a 26-year-old in uniform who is being treated with more grace than he feels he has earned. I found more, he says, on Sentinel Holdings, the company receiving the copied files. It connects to 12 shell companies registered in 7 different countries. The ownership chain traces to 3 individuals, 2 retired generals and 1 former Pentagon procurement official, all 3 currently working as consultants for private military contractors, all 3 with historical connections to ironclad solutions going back further than the current network. He hands her a printed summary. Diana reads it. Her expression does not change, but her attention sharpens in the way of someone who has just been given the next piece of something they have been assembling for a long time. Send everything to Agent Cole. She'll coordinate with Colonel Farr. Already done, ma'am. She looks at him. You have potential, Petty Officer Rourke. Don't waste it. He salutes. It is not as crisp as it could be, and it is more genuine than most she has received today. She returns it precisely. 2 weeks later, the logistics office in Building C looks the way it always looks. Institutional, fluorescent, full of the small sounds of a large bureaucratic organization processing itself, keyboards, low voices, the occasional printer, the smell of coffee and recycled air. Diana Reeves sits at her desk. The desk is small and tucked in a corner, the kind of placement that signals low institutional priority. She has a filing system that looks slightly disorganized to people who don't know it, and is in fact a precise navigation system for a large amount of information. She has a coffee mug that says nothing clever on it. She has a telephone that rings sometimes, and that she answers the way she answers it every day. Pacific Fleet Logistics, this is Diana. She is wearing the gray blazer. It has been repaired, the left sleeve, sewn back with the careful functional stitching of someone who knows how to do the job without it needing to be beautiful. The repair is visible if you look. She has not had it tailored to hide it. Garrett Finch comes by at 9:30. He looks different than he did 2 weeks ago. Thinner in the face somehow, the way people look when they have done a significant amount of thinking in a short period of time. He carries a folder. Cross-referenced Voss's travel logs with procurement approval dates, he says, setting the folder on her desk. He was on base for every single transfer. 16 trips to D.C. in the last 14 months. Kepler and Associates each time, but I also found 2 meetings with a defense advisory board that has contracts overlapping with 3 separate theater commands. He pauses. I also found email correspondence. Voss was coordinating with 2 other flag officers, a Marine Corps Major General at Quantico and a Coast Guard Rear Admiral based out of Portsmouth. Both have independent access to procurement systems in their respective branches. Both show the same late-night access patterns. Diana opens the folder, reads, "Good work, Lieutenant Commander," she says. "Send everything to Colonel Farr. This is Inspector General territory now." Finch nods. He does not leave immediately. "Commander," he says, "I've been thinking about what you said, about never assuming the person in front of you is what they appear to be." He pauses. "I've been in JAG for 6 years. I've never questioned evidence the way I should have. I assumed I understood how this worked." "Now you know something you didn't," Diana says. "The question is what you do with it." He nods. He picks up the folder. "If you need anything else for the investigation," he says, "I'm at your service." She returns his salute. He leaves. Roy Carver is in the parking lot at 11. He is leaning against his truck with a coffee cup and the patient stillness of a man who knows that some things cannot be hurried and has arranged his relationship with time accordingly. Diana walks out into the October morning, the California kind, clear and salt-edged and full of light that feels like something kept. They stand together for a moment without speaking. "What you did in there," Carver says eventually. "Not just the operation, the whole of it. 2 years of letting people treat you like you were nobody. That is a particular kind of service, Commander. It doesn't get a ceremony. It doesn't get a citation. It doesn't get anything the institution officially knows how to give." Diana looks at the parking lot at the ordinary middle morning movement of a base going about its business. "It gets results," she says. "You carry scars nobody salutes," Carver says. "That's the hardest kind." She is quiet for a moment. "Someone has to, Master Chief." "That's always been true. Someone always has to." He nods. He drinks his coffee. It is a companionable silence, the kind between people who have been in situations together that require no further discussion and no resolution. The situation was the resolution, and what remains is the ordinary morning and the next thing and the thing after that. "If you ever need anything," Carver says. "I'll call him," Diana says. "I'll answer." He gets in the truck. She watches him drive toward the gate. She looks down at her left hand. The cuff of the blazer just above the repaired seam catches the morning light. The stitching is visible. The slight difference in the fabric surface where the needle went through. She has been wearing this blazer for 6 years, and she knows every square inch of it with the familiarity of something that has been present through enough significant things to become part of them. She does not fix the stitching. She goes back inside. The apartment is small. 1 bedroom, a desk near the window, a kitchen that gets used for practical purposes. The walls have very little on them, not because the person who lives here is without history, but because people who maintain cover identities for extended periods develop a particular spareness in their private spaces. The careful minimalism of someone who knows their real life has to be portable. It is 11:40 at night. Diana sits at the desk with the laptop open, running the cross-reference work that Farr's office requested the financial trace on the Sentinel Holdings shell company network, 12 entities across 7 jurisdictions. The slow institutional archaeology of finding out who is standing at the end of a very long chain. A new email arrives, no subject line, No sender address that resolves to anything real. Just an alphanumeric string where a name should be. She opens it. There is no text, just a file attachment. She opens the attachment. It is a photograph. Clear, high resolution, taken with equipment that knows what it is doing. The subject is a girl, 14 years old. She is walking down the steps of a school building in afternoon light backpack on one shoulder, head slightly down in the way of teenagers who have not yet decided how they feel about being observed by the world. She is wearing a blue jacket. Her dark hair is cut in the way that Diana's daughter has worn her hair since she was 11. The school is in Alexandria, Virginia. Diana knows this school. She knows this street. She knows her daughter walks this route every Tuesday and Thursday because the after-school program she attends runs those days, and her aunt, who has been raising her while Diana has been in San Diego being a secretary, picks her up at the corner 2 blocks north. In the lower right corner of the photograph, there is a symbol, a naval anchor, overlaid with a trident and a number, 7. Below the symbol, one word, Sentinel. Diana looks at the photograph. She does not move for a very long time. The apartment is quiet. The laptop hums. Through the window, the city is doing what cities do at this hour, the ambient light of 10,000 simultaneous lives occupying the same dark geography. For the first time in this entire story, Diana Reeves' hands are not entirely still. Not trembling, not visibly shaking, but the absolute practice stillness, the product of 20 years of training and 2 years of cover, and a discipline tested in this building and in other buildings in other countries, has a crack in it. The crack is not fear. It is the specific fury of a person who has maintained professional detachment about everything that can be done to her personally and has just been shown the one thing she does not have professional detachment about. She picks up the encrypted phone. It rings once. Diana, Vice Admiral Harriet Wynne, alert. The voice of someone who sleeps lightly and answers quickly. They found my daughter. A pause, not a long one. Where is she now? With my sister in Alexandria. She doesn't know. How long do you need? Diana looks at the photograph on the screen. She looks at the symbol in the corner, the anchor, the trident, the number 7, the word sentinel, and she looks at her daughter's blue jacket and the particular way she is carrying her backpack, the slight forward lean she has had since she was small, which has nothing to do with military operations or classified networks or any of the things that have occupied the last 2 years. It is just her daughter walking home from school on a Tuesday afternoon. 48 hours, Diana says. You'll have everything you need, full support. One other thing, name it. Make sure she doesn't know, not yet. I don't want her to be afraid. A pause. Done, Wynne says. Be careful. Diana closes the call. She sets the phone on the desk. She looks at the photograph one more time. Then she closes the laptop, and the room is dark except for the ambient light of the city coming through the window. She closes her eyes. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. When she opens them, she is already in a different place than she was before she closed them. Not geographically, not visibly, but in the way that matters. The crack is still there. It will always be there now. But it has been placed where it belongs, which is not in the hands and not in the eyes and not in the breath. It belongs in the reason. She stands. She picks up the gray blazer from the chair where she left it. She puts it on. There is a question worth sitting with. Not about Diana Reeves specifically, not about this case, this building, this October day, but about something this story points toward. There are people in this country, in the military, in the government, in the quiet machinery of institutions that most of us interact with only at the edges, who do work that is not visible, who carry expertise that is never publicly credited, who maintain their presence in difficult situations, not because anyone is watching, not because there is a ceremony at the end, not because the institution will formally acknowledge what it cost them, who do it because the thing that needs doing is the thing that needs doing, and they are the ones who can do it. My father had a saying. He said it about a few specific people he had known over the course of a long life, people who had done right things in hard situations without requiring that anyone witness them doing it. He said the most dangerous person in any room isn't the one making the most noise. It's the one who already made their decision, quietly, and a long time ago. I think about that a lot. I think about the cost of the decision. The real cost, not the abstract cost, but the specific cost measured in the specific things that get given up. The rank, the recognition, the years. The ordinary life that is not available to people who have chosen to spend their time doing something that requires them to be invisible. I don't know what Diana Reeves was thinking in that apartment, looking at that photograph, making that phone call. I know what she did next. There are more people like her than we know about. There are more stories like this one than we are ever allowed to hear. If you have known someone like that, someone who did the hard thing quietly without asking for credit and maybe paid a price for it that was never formally acknowledged, I'd like to hear about them. Leave it in the comments. I read everyone.